Lance from the Serfs, friend of the show, great guy, went on Tim Pool. Tim Pool, have me on. I would love to come on. Again, this is like I'm constantly trying to pitch myself for debate bro situations. I'm not a bro, but I can debate and I'll do it. Lance went on Tim Pool's show, and this is one part of it here where they're speaking about conservatism. We have, I guess, 3 clips from this. Speaking about I guess Tim Pool's show and if it is conservative or not. And Lance tries to give some perspective on what the show is actually espousing.
This is not a conservative show, but if you are in a cult, you wouldn't know that. You would only hear what the cult says.
So here's what I have to respond to that. If an objective person, say an alien, just showed up and looked at your channel, Tim, and went through all the videos, and you were to ask them, poll them, is this person and his views, where would you place them? Most likely they would say conservative. That's going to be my bet.
That's actually wrong.
Yes.
But more because the guests that come on
not
tend
just
to
even
identify.
the guests, but the way they're framed, the thumbnails, the words that you put in red, and the whether or not you're supporting or going against either the Democrats or the Republicans. But hey, you tell me that you guys don't like the Democrats and you don't like the Republicans. This is not a Republican stream. You don't want to even endorse Republicans in any way, shape, or form, or vote for them.
I don't.
Big no.
I don't vote on party lines
we do like.
personally.
Okay, sure. But there's a lot of right wingers who watch you, right? So that's what I mean when I say you do have a voice and you do have an audience of right wingers who are going to vote at one point or another. 30% of your audience is right wing.
Most of the people who watch this, the largest faction is libertarian.
Okay.
The next largest would be considered traditional liberal. Oh no, I think.
But along party lines, who are the libertarians going to vote for? Not the Libertarian Party. Most likely they're going to vote for whoever.
When they come on this show and say abolish the police.
One of the two, Republican or Libertarian.
Yeah, most likely, yes, one of the two. So that's why I say, Tim, for the people who watch you who are Republican leaning, why not frame it that way for them so that they can actually start pushing more money into that?
That's why I'm here.
That's
basically true, I think, in a lot of ways.
That's what Moonlord does.
Okay, so I mean, I didn't understand. Tim's desire to distill people to like their voting patterns is a kind of infantile way to view his audience. It's obtuse on purpose. And he picks arguments by libertarians that are sometimes said to bring people over to their side, but that are not really activating in terms of like their actual political activity or voting patterns, like the abolish the police thing, or like the, legalize all drugs thing and the drug war. Those are things that libertarians will raise their hand and say, hey, we can find common ground with progressives on this. But for the most part, it's a red herring because they'll always vote Republicans in terms of which party actually has a realistic chance to win. And when they do, the things that they really are most in favor of is dismantling the administrative state, lowering taxes, and making sure that our social safety net is as threadbare or non-existent as possible, which is stuff that the left is primarily focused on opposing. So that's not a really great argument.
Yeah, you could say the legalized drugs thing or the abolishing police or the police state. Then say 2 words, and then that's where we really divert into the voting Republican category, which is private property.
Yeah, right.
And anything that has to do with private property and public space.
And when you say that, Bradley, what do you think that libertarians think about private police forces?
Yeah,
maybe acting in the same way
as we've seen
as mercenaries.
As we've seen with multiple debates that Sam has done with different libertarians, Anthony Fury or Larry Sharp or Yaron Brook, like all of them are like, yeah, we'd have private judicial courts, we'd have privatized courts, so any sort of public good would be privatized for some sort of economic gain or some sort of
and they pretend that would create some sort of equitable society local control when I don't know, ExxonMobil has its own court that it funds. That's going to be really impartial. So like the libertarian ideology is Republican ideology. That's why we have guys like Mike Lee and Rand Paul within the Republican Party who kind of try to say they're a part of libertarian thought when, they're just Republicans.
Isn't it just libertarian when the Mississippi State Legislature wants to create a court specifically specifically for Jackson, Mississippi, so they can, just try poor black people on their own docket.
Yeah.
Isn't it just libertarian when the Texas state legislature wants to specifically designate election laws for Harris County, one of the most highly populous counties in the entire state that votes blue?
That's not Republican.
No, it's local control.
Oh,
It's
gotcha.
local control.
I mean, there's the reason it's very strategic why Tim doesn't just say, yeah, this is a conservative or center-right show is because I would recommend people Timba on Toast, Timbah on Toast.
Tim Pool Fence Sitter.
On YouTube. Yeah, Tim Pool Fence Sitter. A really long look at this, but that's in Tim Pool. Like, he knows that he gets an entire audience full of people who want to hear like, oh, Trump's going to win in a landslide, but he's valuable to them because he's not a right winger nominally. He's supposedly something else, something independent, because even right wingers are like, okay, look, it's good hearing that Trump had the election stolen or whatever, but I feel like at a certain point I might be sniffing my own farts. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to go try to get a liberal's perspective on this. And that's what Tim Pool provides. And so like if he actually ever said he's a center right one, people are going to be like, well, I'm just going to go to the people who are like less coy about like being a right winger.
This is a tale as old as time, and MR, before I've been here, years before, has been great at covering this. Is the reactionary right-wing media ecosystem is built on people who espouse right-wing talking points but say that they're apolitical. It's one of the only ways to launder right-wing thought and build an audience in that way is to sell unpopular ideas under the guise of free thought and pretending that they are not political in and of themselves when everything is political. And so, yeah, Tim Pool is also resting on a fatal and convenient assumption that it's not just how he covers something, which, like, as Timba on Toast lays out very well, will contain a lot of caveats and fence sitting, but it's what you cover. It's honestly probably more what you cover than what you say in the coverage. And what Tim Pool covers is exclusively basically right-wing content.
I mean, this is a guy who did like 20 videos on the Jussie Smollett thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's emphasis. That's the most important thing that people in our field have to grapple with, is what do we emphasize? Because you can't emphasize everything. You have to emphasize specific things. And what you do choose to cover is as important. Again, I'm repeating myself, but as what you say in that coverage. Here is the second clip that we've pulled here of Lance on Tim Pool's show, Timcast, where they start to talk about trans people and gender affirming care here.
This is just Lance at the end of it clowning on Tim. Like Tim just gets so angry because Lance is not taking him seriously.
Yeah, there we go. Well, I mean, I look forward to that.
Okay, so my follow-up is, you think trans people feel safer than ever?
No. Right now, there's over 400 different bills being pushed in the United States that is directly targeting trans people.
So they don't feel safe?
Of course they don't.
So then why are they coming out if they don't feel safe?
They have more access because that Generation Z, has a lot more acceptance towards trans people than older people who pass laws, draconian people who pass laws. The boomers are the ones running the show right now. They're still the ones in government. They're still the ones passing laws. There's very few Generation Z in government or parliament.
You want to know what I think? I think there is a trans genocide.
Okay.
And I think it's you.
Okay.
Because you're sterilizing a lot of these people.
How so?
I mean, they're literally sterilizing them. The surgery to remove the gonads, hysterectomies, and puberty and cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers have a high rate of sterilization. I mean, first of all, removal of the gonads.
So I guess sterilization should be outlawed, even if people want it. No opportunity if you want to get your tubes tied, to use a crude term for when people who have uteruses choose to have that. No vasectomies. That's sterilization, is it not? You're removing because you want to not have any children anymore. your ability to get pregnant or impregnate someone.
Again, like the implied frivolity with which Tim thinks people get these surgeries is just it's a fucking smear, and it's disgusting.
Yeah.
Like nobody is getting these surgeries just like, okay, Snapchat told me that I'm trans and now doctor, give it to me.
Yeah.
Like this is after a prolonged period of social transitioning that has nothing to do with any sort of like pharmaceutical or surgical intervention, which by the way, Tim Pool and all these fucking losers are against too. They're against the pronoun shit. That's why they've made that a big fucking thing the entire time. Guess what? You don't need surgeries for pronouns. You don't get sterilized when somebody calls you she instead of he. Like this is what they do when they're called to account. They act like, oh, I'm just asking questions about, is medicine going too far? But the actual thing is, no, you hate all of this stuff. And so like you can say like, oh, you're actually concerned about the transgenocide in the same statement where you're denying that they even exist.
Exactly. And if they just cared about medical mutilation, as I said, they'd be against vasectomies. They'd be against any voluntary sterilization for people who have uteruses. They'd be against breast augmentation. They'd be against breast reduction surgery. They'd be against rhinoplasties under the age of 18. Oh, you're mutilating your face.
Criminal butchers.
Exactly. But they're not. So here we go.
I mean, they're literally sterilizing them. The surgery to remove the gonads, hysterectomies, and puberty and cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers have a high rate of sterilization. I mean, first of all, removal of the gonads in the uterus is an absolute sterilization, and then puberty blockers have a very high rate, and cross-sex hormones have an extremely high rate of sterilizing the individual. So these people can no longer reproduce. That's genocide.
Right. Is this the joke you're going to go for?
Joke? You are removing these people's ability to reproduce.
You,
and if they're a young,
sorry, Lance is doing this?
I guess, yeah.
Or is this
is Lance a doctor? Is Lance a gender-affirming care provider?
Yeah, or is this like the patients themselves, their parents, and doctors over a prolonged period of assessment? like nobody's doing this to anybody.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like, this is what I appreciate where Lance goes from here is just like to establish what we need to establish when we watch videos like this. Tim Pool is a fundamentally unserious person who does not warrant serious inquiry when he says shit like this.
It's also like
he's not a serious person.
It's not a trans genocide. They're still alive and they're making this choice themselves.
Yeah.
And it's not passed down through birth. Like you're not eliminating trans people because trans people aren't having trans children. That's not how that works.
What's freakish and like sort of medically brutal is to say like, okay, this child socially transitioning starting like age 4, which is very common, like that young kids know. Okay, now they're 12, approaching puberty, and there's actual interventions that can be done to help them avoid a puberty into a body that they no longer identify with. Forcing them, because a fucking Republican lawmaker needed it to get elected, to go through that puberty that to me is monstrous. That to me is genocide. That to me is asking that person to consider suicide.
Yep. Here we go.
That's genocide.
Right. Is this the joke you're going to go for?
Joke? You are removing these people's ability to reproduce. And if they're a young age and they haven't had the ability, like for instance, Jazz Jennings can never have kids. Jazz Jennings also, and this probably part of your studies, can't actually feel any sexual feeling of any kind.
Do you have any idea how weird this sounds right now? Like, why are you obsessed with a stranger's genital pleasure? That's so weird. That's so bizarre.
That was very weird yourself.
You guys are all weird.
So I'm talking about adults who engage in activities, which is a large portion of the global economy, whether you like it or not. Sure. Sex sells, they say. And when I say this person will never have this ability, you go, how weird is that?
It's weird for you to fixate on a stranger's genital pleasure. That's strange.
It's
so bizarre.
Well, she's public about it.
But see, you're not making an argument right now, is my point.
I'm not. I'm saying it's weird. It's not an argument.
Yeah,
that's an observation.
So you're trying to make an appeal to emotion and an appeal to shame.
I'm just
sorry, the argument is this shit is all irrelevant and not politics, and you're fucking like that is an argument.
Yes.
Like Lance is going to be generous and say, fine, I'm just making an observation. No, that's an argument. Argument is like, this is fucking bullshit. What are we talking about?
The argument is stop fixating on Jazz Jennings, a 22-year-old YouTuber.
Who I've never heard of
you
before.
fucking freak.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And like, what if she could? What if all of a sudden, like, the medicine has gotten to a point where, okay, actually she feels even better pleasure? Like, what fucking point does it? It's
that's not
entirely
even true.
irrelevant.
There are trans women feel. He has no idea what he's talking about. I know. I've trans women feel pleasure. It's.
And even if one doesn't, like, who cares?
That's their choice.
Right? Like,
I mean, again, this is the medical freedom people. Do we have like stuff from what Tim Pool was saying about vaccines? Oh,
yeah.
Pretty sure I remember him being in favor of people's individual freedom to make their own choices with medicine. But here we go.
About it.
But see, you're not making an argument right now, is my point.
I'm not. I'm saying it's weird. It's not an argument.
Yeah,
That's an observation.
So you're trying to make an appeal to emotion and an appeal to shame.
No, I'm just giving you my genuine thought when you say something like that. Like,
well, it was a really fucking pathetic attempt to try to make an argument.
He's so mad.
Woo!
A pathetic attempt at an argument that Lance specifically said he wasn't making because he was making an observation, which was basically an argument that you're a fucking freak, Tim.
How about this, Tim? You're a groomer, fixating on other people's sexualities, fixating on it for no reason. How about that? That's why he got triggered, because he knows that his fixation is unnatural and fucked up, and that he's titillated in some way by it. And that is what he's providing for their audience, like some fixation on other people's genitalia and sexuality. Psycho.
What did he call it? Really fucking pathetic. Like, that is somebody who is mad.
That's wait. Is that an argument? Is that an argument?
You're doing a fucking appeal to emotion. Damn
yeah,
it.
right. You're doing a fucking appeal to emotion by triggering me.
Sorry, is it also an argument to say that you're saying that? Is it a really cogent argument that a 22-year-old YouTuber apparently, according to you, doesn't feel sexual pleasure because she's a trans person?
I mean,
show your evidence, Tim.
Tim's really not familiar with anatomy. I'd imagine that his partners probably would feel the same way. Not to,
Jazz Jennings, another instance. Like, actually, this is the thing to drill down on.
I'm fixating on it because he's going there.
Right. But this puts the lie to all their bullshit. Jennings was assigned male at birth and was diagnosed with gender dysphoria by age 4. The idea that all of this is some sort of thing they learn at school, for you're not at school yet, or some sort of mind virus by TikTok is just ludicrous. This is all that's happened is kids who did this like 60 years ago were told, no, put on these fucking bib overalls and do this. And now we have a different context for that. And that is like, there's no debate here. There's no actual debate with regards to any of these issues. And like, that's the thing that needs to be underlined to anybody who isn't like there yet, which hopefully most people listening to this are.
All right, so now we have that, and then this is the third part that we have here from Lance's appearance. They talk about abortion here. Tim, I mean, again, he was trying earlier to claim that this show is not right-wing.
Libertarian, yeah.
Look at the framing that he has when asking a question about abortion here.
Should she have the ability to have an abortion for any reason? Yes.
At 9 months.
At 9 months, I would say at 9 months, because it only happens, according to the stats, based on complete medical necessity. She has a right to do it.
Hold on. Sorry, just to answer this before we get to it, like, yes, that's the answer. Is we don't need Republican lawmakers getting involved here. This is between women, people giving birth, and their doctors. And there needs to be like the implied thing is that again, you can't trust people, and you need the state to get involved, and you don't. You simply don't need to like be doing that.
Should she have the ability to have an abortion for any reason? Yes.
At 9 months.
At 9 months. I would say at 9 months, because it only happens, according to the stats, based on complete medical necessity. She has a right to do it.
Hold on. Colorado legalized abortion up to 9 months with no medical reason required. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that decision, yes.
So the baby could survive on its own, and the mother is legally now allowed to just end its life.
She has the right if she wanted to. You're saying so in Colorado, and I'm
sorry. Again, this is an undercutting of medical professionals and their research and understanding of this topic. A mother just doesn't just like go and like, am I going to wear a blue top today or a red top today, or am I going to kill my baby who's like 8 months and viable outside the womb, the fetus, or am I going to keep it? That's not how it works.
Yeah.
When these situations arise, when a person is at that point of pregnancy where a late-term abortion is necessary, it is because the life of the mother is in danger. There are medical issues involved here, and it's a doctor making that choice.
Exactly.
And especially in the context of what we're dealing with in this country right now, with massive amounts of litigation and legal tie-ups over abortion, and doctors potentially fearing for that they'll get disbarred or go into prison if they violate these theocratic laws in any way. Those late-term abortion decisions are incredibly rare, and just because of those really narrow and scary options that are in play when a woman or a person who's pregnant at that period is when that has to be considered. It's a last resort. It's a last resort every time.
And that's why, like, exactly. This is why, okay, this horrible situation is occurring, and where it's usually dealt with by medical professionals, which is what it should be dealt with in the patient. It's, now all of a sudden we need to talk to a judge and make sure that they're not going to fuck my career over if I help this person. Because guess what? Like, and I don't understand how, like, you get to adulthood without being aware of this, but like when there are miscarriages, that's called a D and C. I forget what the D stands for, but at the curettage is the
dilatation and curettage,
and that is like the same coding medically as an abortion. Mm-hmm. And like, again, we've seen this over and over again already, that doctors will be in a situation where it's like, okay, we need to operate here, but this law is on the books and I could be screwed for it, so just have the miscarriage instead.
Yeah, right. And we already seen those examples.
A woman in Oklahoma was essentially told that she has to wait in the parking lot until she's essentially bleeding out before the life-saving determination could be made.
That happens way more than the 9 month.
Exactly.
I changed my mind.
Exactly. I mean, and this is the thing that Tim Pool has made a lot of money on, is talking about politics in such an abstract way that it completely strips out the context that we're talking about here, which is like the realities. It's the 24ification of political discourse.
Exactly. It's the ticking time bomb because, the terrorist is, in the new trade center.
Right. Yeah. And that would never happen in real life. Like, would you support torture if Jack Bauer had only 24 hours to get rid of a bomb that would kill 10,000 people? And in like that, very narrow discourse about philosophy and morality in this situation that will never happen, most people would say yes, but that's never going to fucking happen. And so why are we talking about it? It's the same thing with the late-term abortion. I don't want to be a mom, even though I've decided to carry this pregnancy almost fully to term, and I want the baby to die in front of me. That doesn't fucking happen. But here we go.
And it's a smear of people that happens.
Yes.
So the baby could survive on its own, and the mother is legally now allowed to just end its life.
She has the right if she wanted to. You're saying so in Colorado, and
it's not a trick question. You're
I know, but I'm asking you because you're the one who brought this up. I don't know what Colorado specific law says. So if you were saying that in Colorado, women have the ability at 9 months to have an abortion for any reason, they could just decide that they're bored.
Yeah.
Okay, I think they should have the right to do that, but the stats show that they're not doing that. But they should have a legal right to do that. Yes, it's their body, it's their choice, of course.
So this is what I disagree on. I think if the baby needs to be removed from the woman, there's no reason to kill it. You know what I mean? Like, you could just C-section and then put it up for adoption.
I'm telling you that doesn't happen.
Casual C-section.
But it does. But hold on.
Like, you might be able to bring up anecdotes, but the stats don't say that.
Hold on. Like, why allow it to happen? I just don't understand. Are you arguing? Hold on. Are you arguing you oppose it And you think it's morally wrong, but you think it should be legal?
I think that women should have the right to decide what they do and have bodily autonomy over their own bodies.
We're not talking about her body. We're talking
It
about...
is her body.
We're
Of course
talking
it is.
about...
At 9 months, even if it's still inside her, it's still her body. Even if it's a
But
viable
we're
baby, it's
talking
still her
about the
body.
removal of the baby, yes?
No, we're
forceful
talking about
removal of the
something that
baby,
never
or-
happened.
Forceful.
So she chooses to have that. She
The
should have the
woman
right.
says the baby must be removed from my body.
Which
Why
doesn't
kill
happen.
the baby if they're removing it?
I don't think they should do that. I would. If
you think
they
it's
ask me,
illegal?
if they ask me, Lance, should I do this? I would say no. But she should have a right. Yes, of course. It's her body still. That doesn't
listen.
stop.
So, like, the woman is pregnant, the baby is viable and capable of surviving on its own.
Sure.
And she says before it breaches oxygen, kill it. You think that should be allowed?
How it goes.
This is again the baby guillotines. This is why I brought that up.
but-
what a weird scenario. This doesn't happen. This is not the real world.
But it does.
When?
And if the argument is that it doesn't happen enough for you to care, that's fine. You're allowed to believe that.
Sure.
What I don't understand is it seems like your position is a rather shocked position where you recognize there is something inherently wrong with taking the life of a baby that could survive on its own, but you're also taking the tribal position of women should be allowed to do it anyway.
No. If you were to ask me, Tim, hey, Lance, do you think it's a good idea if this woman who's 9 months pregnant, suddenly she got bored with the pregnancy, she doesn't want to have it anymore, the baby's viable? Do you think that's a good thing to do? I would be like, no, of course not.
Then why should it be allowed?
Because it's still her right. It's still her body.
But
Bodily autonomy doesn't stop at my morality.
Love you, Lance, but
that's
yeah,
not really
that's
where
not really
it is.
what happens.
It's because of like I think the broader effect. Like I think like you're right, but ultimately it's I think because of like it's unenforceable. Like this idea that. Because again, you have to have a judge come in and adjudicate, and you have the exact same problems you have now,
it's a pretend problem
Exactly.
used to make sure that abortion is limited.
But even if you
for
granted that it was real,
legitimate uses, but like, I'm sorry, hey Tim, uterus over here. When women or people who get pregnant are at that point and the fetus is viable, labor is induced. It's induced. That's what happens in these medical situations. If she's going to be okay, or they are going to be okay when they're giving birth, not what you're describing. The woman like, I went through all of this. I took prenatal vitamins. I went to the doctor. I spent all this money on these visits and medical situations, but I'm bored with this. I'm just a total psycho, and I'd love to kill the baby in front of me. I mean, that's the pretend situation that they're putting up there. And the reason that they create straw men like this is to limit abortion rights more broadly.
Right.
So the point is that this is a false conversation. It's like saying, what would you do if the sky was green and the grass was blue? I don't really know, because that's not the case. So why are we engaging in this? It's masturbatory, in and of itself. But what the political implications are that it's disempowering.
Yeah, it's just like it's a solution to a fake problem that actually solves other problems that they don't want to admit are like they think are problems, which is that women have the right to choose broadly.
And the thing that Tim says, like, why not just let the baby live? What are you talking about? That's never happened. That has never happened. Where
They kill the baby.
Yeah, where they're like, I've gone through, the fetus is viable. I don't want the baby, and I could give the baby up for adoption, or we could just kill it right now. That has never happened. A doctor doesn't allow that to happen because this is a part of a larger delegitimization of academia, of expertise, and of medical professionals, where they pretend that these situations are commonplace when they just don't happen.
Yeah, so the simple answer to like, well, if you agree it's wrong, well, why don't you agree there should be a law about it? Is one because it doesn't happen, and two because it will have other harmful effects.
Right.
Easy.
Yeah, we're done with that? All right, good. He's an idiot, Tim Pool. He really is. Just...
Also, like, where are the Republicans saying, like, what is it, 8 month then? Like, yeah, they always say, like, oh, it's 9 months. Like,
oh, yeah.
And it's like, well, what, like, why are you making it down to, like, such and such weeks then?
Yeah. I mean, I know people who have, like, or at least one person who's been the fetus was not viable, like, forced to give birth. Okay, It's incredibly traumatic.
Yeah, and I know somebody who had like a miscarriage and it was called D&C, but also like coded as an abortion, that person wasn't a pro-abortion, but now like sees the problem with like Younger was against abortion, but now sees the problem with legislating this because of the complications there. Like it's just like it's a needless. There's not a problem of rampant abortions. No. Like there's a problem of women not being empowered to like have control of their health.
And Lance only makes one more interesting point here. We don't have to. It's just not. There's not too much left of the clip. That regardless of this insane edge case that they're talking about, which is always where these arguments go to, like the most radical 1% of 1% edge, bleeding edge cases that might be litigated or adjudicated, is that Lance just makes the point that whatever Lance's personal morality might be on the subject, and I also think not just Lance, anybody's, whatever anybody's personal morality on the subject is, that is not the line where the morality and the ability for a woman to have bodily autonomy both end. It's not incumbent upon us to have moral judgment or moral casting about a woman's bodily autonomy. That does, like, it doesn't necessarily, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I think it's totally fine for a baby to come out of somebody's womb and then for us to shoot it dead. I don't know, something like that. That's not the point.
Yeah.
Whether I think that's okay or not has nothing to do with the issue. The morale,
but that never happens. That's the point. Yeah, right.
Like there's like that type of moral question, this stuff that Tim loves to talk about, where he says, "Oh, I really want to talk about the issues," then I get bogged down in philosophical moral bullshit. That bullshit does not matter when it comes to these circumstances.
Honestly, yeah, it true. Like Tim would be better served writing fan fiction. Honestly, like if you want to deal with things that are just not based in reality, write fan fiction about whatever TV show you love, and like you can make your two faves kiss, and you can, you know, what do you call it? Stan them or ship them?
Because as you're saying, this is actually functionally when we have people bleeding out in parking lots because the life-saving threshold isn't being met. That's real.
That's real.
Actually happening. This shit's not happening.
Exactly.